Hey, Mistakes listeners, this is Dave, and welcome back to another episode. This week, Todd and I looked at the show Inspector Gadget. This would be the new Inspector Gadget from 2015. We recorded this show on 10/4/2015. This would be episode 28. Now, remember, we actually would like to get some followers and more likes, so you can go to Twitter and follow us there at Parrot Mistakes. And like us on Facebook at Parenting Mistakes. Sit back and enjoy the show. Okay, so as I told you in the pre-show, Todd, you're there?
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
that's
here
good,
with my pumpkin spice frappuccino.
So as I told you in the pre-show, one of the new things that I thought I would add to the show this week was maybe giving some parenting advice.
Uh-oh.
Right? Well, I think we've given parenting advice in the past, but I don't think we've actually been really direct in telling parents that they should go out and try certain things, right? Have we done that?
Well, that's sort of been our whole thing, is we tried not to do that
specifically. Oh. Well, no, yeah. We want parents to basically make good decisions for their kids on their own. I suppose
Yes.
Try or try not, right? So I suppose I could say if I could give them a recommendation, which is what we do. I suppose I can't get on their podcast and say, you have to do this, right?
Well, you could. There's plenty of podcasts, I'm sure, that do that.
That say that you have to?
Yes.
Okay.
Like political podcasts, I'm sure, get on and say, you must vote for this or you must not vote for this candidate. I'm sure there's lots of podcasts.
Really, what political podcasts do you know that do that?
I don't know,
Yeah,
but I have to guess. I'm basing I'm just saying people have strong opinions, so I have to assume somebody out there is doing a podcast where they say, this is what you must do.
Right. Actually, I'd never heard that before.
Well, we never. Here's the problem, though.
What?
Well, we haven't discussed what you're going to say. So what happens if you give this advice and I say, no, people, that's a bad idea.
Okay. No,
Don't listen to my friend Dave.
This might be actually something that you haven't done, which I think every parent should do.
There's lots of things I haven't done.
That's how I should put it, is I think this is something that every parent should do. So this last week, you know, us a little background history. I am a stay-at-home dad. Did you know I'm a stay-at-home dad, Todd?
Yes, I am aware of that. Okay. Is that what we're doing now?
We're
going to pretend that we're introducing each other for the first time?
I'm trying to be creative about it.
Next thing you're going to tell me you like Star Trek or something like that.
Yes, it's on. Did you know I like Star Trek?
Oh, a little bit.
I married a woman named Jolene. Did you know that?
Yeah, I knew that as well. I knew you could speak just a little bit of Klingon.
Yeah, that's like okay, I won't do it right now. Anyway, that's beam me up. But anyway, for the viewing audience, if you just want to know a little Klingon.
That was from Star Trek 3, wasn't it?
Yes, correct.
See?
Yeah.
Okay, get to your example.
It's not an example. This is something you should do.
Okay.
I asked Kayleen's teacher this week if I could actually have lunch with Kayleen.
At school?
At school.
Okay.
Have you ever done this?
I have brought my kids their lunch that they left in the fridge at home.
Right.
Is that the same thing?
No, it is not. This is actually sitting down at the cafeteria with them and actually having lunch with them and their friends. I'm sure that Emma would love this.
Yeah.
I'm sure Jonathan would think this is great.
I think that is fine advice. Can I take over your example and give you my particular perspective right now?
Go ahead. By all means, my friend.
Okay, so here is where my children are a little unique in this regard, in that my wife is a high school math teacher. My oldest daughter, who is a senior, currently has her as a teacher.
Okay, right.
It's in her class.
Yes, it makes sense.
I also sub at that school on occasion.
Right.
So my children are used to having us around. And I do know that on occasion it gets a little much.
Oh, how?
Well, just too much mom and dad.
Really?
Well,
I can foresee that in me and my kid, that'll never happen.
Okay, how old? Yeah, how old? Tell the viewing audience how old your kid is.
A kid? I have two of them.
Yeah, I know.
Are we going back to like
the one in school? The one in school. How old is the one in school?
I've got a 6-year-old.
Okay, 6-year-old.
Yeah,
okay,
6.
so when a kid is 6, the parent is still, giant individual, totally control, that sort of thing.
When I walked into the cafeteria, they loved me. It was great.
That's fantastic.
There's some little girl that came up to me and said, "Can you open up my V8 can?" I'm like, absolutely I can, because I'm like Superman in there, right?
That's great. Keep doing that as long as you can.
As long as you can. So the parenting unmistake here is to say, yes, by all means, if you have the opportunity right now, go to school and have lunch with them, because you totally can. And I'm not saying the teachers encouraged. Our teachers very open to it. Like, sure, absolutely. And I actually brought her 3-year-old sister with us too. But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I couldn't recommend it more. Every parent that has an opportunity to do it now should do it. I'm not sure if they should be teaching their kids classes, but that's a whole other thing.
So I subbed yesterday.
Yes.
And my kids know I'm going to be there, and they're used to being...
So right now you're working at 3 schools? 3 schools.
Yeah, I'm working at 3 different schools.
Wow.
It's a
That's
long story.
crazy, man.
It is. I think my daughter's friends were happier to see me than her, particularly the guys, because I do youth group at our church, and they're sort of under my
so
charge.
You're doing 4 things.
Yeah.
Wow.
But then I ran into my son, who's a freshman.
Yeah.
And he was standing with some of his friends, and I definitely sort of got this vibe of, I will acknowledge that you are my parent, but now go away.
Now, there's something they could put on YouTube.
Yes.
How could you get that on YouTube for sure?
So follow Dave's parenting advice.
Do it while you can.
Do it while you can, but don't make the mistake of overstaying your welcome. Give your kids a little bit of space.
Yeah.
And if they sort of say, okay, thanks for checking in, now we'd like to just be juvenile freshmen.
Yeah, I think Maddie and I were with Kaylee for a maximum of 15 minutes. That was a 15 minutes of enough.
Well, see, there you go.
Yeah. Well, we actually got to eat lunch. I sat next to several of the students, and it was fun. I got to open up a V8 can and all that stuff, so, there you go.
So you got out of the car and you said, go, Gadget, lunch.
Yes, I did. Perfect transition.
Was that forced?
It always is. It always is. Yes, so we watched Inspector Gadget this week. The new one.
The new one.
The
latest.
The latest version of Inspector Gadget.
There's been a few, hasn't there?
There has. Oh, well, there's the one that we watched in the 80s. Right?
Yes.
Which I actually never watched, I think, a single episode. I liked the beginning of that show, but I never watched the whole thing. I think I was a little bit too old for it at the time.
Yeah, I may have watched an episode or two. Yeah, I remember the song, and I know it spawned a couple of movies, and then now it's been redone again.
That's right. Matthew Broderick was Inspector Gadget. Forgotten about that.
Yeah, and then that other guy. They did a sequel where...
They did?
Yeah, I don't think I saw it.
You've seen the sequel to... Wow, okay.
I haven't seen either. No, I know they exist. I don't think I've seen either one of them.
Okay.
Okay, so the basic plot is that there is Inspector Gadget.
Right.
Who is an inspector.
Correct.
I'm not really sure with what branch of the government. This is a Canadian-American television series. He's sort of you get the impression that it's...
Why do you have to mention that it's Canadian?
Well, because I don't know, there's influences,
Because this is how. That's right.
He works for sort of as far as I can tell, sort of an unnamed government branch.
Yeah. Do the Canadians have like a KGB or an FBI, anything like that?
I don't know. I remember that from our high school civics.
They got Second City TV. I'm sure they've got spies, right?
Well, I do know that when we went to Washington, D.C. as a family, which, if I can recommend...
Oh, they have... No, you know what they have? They have Mounties.
Well, I know they have Mounties, but
right,
they don't...
but that's uniquely what they have. They have that government. Like, they got guys...
I understand that, but it's not like that's the only department they have.
Yeah, I know, but when you're thinking about Canadian services, right?
We're going to get in trouble. Because...
No, okay. All right, I'll stop right there. I don't think... So okay, you said you would... We're going to
give a general disclaimer here. And just say, for people listening around the world... We love us some United States, but you know what? People from the United States are not nice to Canada sometimes.
I love Canada. Are you kidding me?
I love Canada too.
I don't think they have a secret service. You were saying that they had a secret service in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I'm just saying that when we went to Washington, D.C., which I will highly recommend as a family.
Yes.
You should do a trip. When we went to Washington, D.C., getting into government buildings, you know, the Smithsonian and the Capitol and stuff, there was certainly a ton of security. I mean, a lot of things you had to do in order to get into these buildings.
Yeah. And
we were in Victoria, and we went to the Parliament building. We just kind of wandered in.
I bet there was a Mountie.
There was not a Mountie.
Wow! I guess.
Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Inspector Gadget, who is
the Canadian lead inspector.
I don't really know. He is a Canadian. He's a Canadian American. Yeah. He works for a joint international. We've lost total control. Okay, so he works for sort of a nondescript government agency.
Right.
He is human, as far as I can tell, but he's got
bionics. I think he's got bionics. I've always assumed he had bionics, right?
Yeah, and all sorts of strange. The basic plot is that he is totally clueless. He is very much a Inspector Clouseau from the Pink Panther series.
Oh, I thought he was based on Get Smart.
You know, I did not watch as much Get Smart. I imagine that there's some elements of that.
I actually think he talks like the guy on Get Smart. I wish I knew. But yeah, you're right. He is like Inspector Clouseau as well, right?
Where he definitely projects an air of total confidence of knowing what he's doing.
Right.
And yet everything around him is...
That's his shtick.
That's his shtick.
Yep.
Okay. So he has two sidekicks, Penny, which is like a teenager, and a dog, Brain. And Brain always like dresses up and sort of follows along to make sure Inspector Gadget is not going to destroy the world.
Yeah, and it's even actually watching the couple episodes we watched, it's hard to determine whether or not Brain is a hindrance or a help. It just appears to me that Inspector Gadget, no matter what, is going to resolve the situation somehow. We all know that Penny is the actual inspector.
Right. So then they have the antagonist, Dr. Claw.
Yep.
Who is also from the original series. And they've added on
Talon.
A sidekick, Talon, who is Dr. Claw's nephew. And then there's also an interplay between Talon and the girl Penny.
Right, and Mad Cat. Mad Cat is actually his...
Yeah, his cat.
Which, not Talon's cat, but Claw's cat.
Dr. Claw's cat. And, you know, for parents, if you've watched, like, the original James Bond movies from, like, the 60s, there's very much you never see Dr. Claw's face, and he's got a cat. So there's very much
he's based on Blofeld.
Ernst Blofeld, who inspired other characters like Dr. Evil in the Austin Powers series. Right. So there you go.
Well,
there's your film education for the day, where all these characters are sort of based on.
Well, no, and this is what I love. Talon is a new type of character all in itself based on Scott Evil. Up until Scott Evil, there had never been a snarky sidekick that was basically telling the villain, your plan is stupid, but I'm going to go along with it anyway. And this is the basis of who Talon is. The only other archetype that I can imagine prior to him is Scott Evil, right? Which Talon is based off of that. He's like looking at Dr. Claw and basically saying, this is a ridiculous plan, but because I'm related to you, I'm your nephew, I'm family, I'm going to execute on whatever plan you come up with, even though it's stupid.
Well, it adds a comedy element. I mean, this is a comedy just in general, but I don't know. It's sort of like a softer bad guy.
Yeah. Oh, right. And Claw now actually has some compassion, right? He basically hypnotizes Talon, I think, in the first episode. No, it's the second episode. And he's going to force him to eat a hairball, and he chooses. He's like, even though I'm evil, I'm not that evil. I wouldn't make him eat the hairball. I thought, wow, okay. In fact, what I do appreciate between the relationship between Claw and Talon is, yes, they're quote-unquote evil plans, but in comparison to a lot of the other cartoons we watch, usually the bad guys are usually really like, you're an idiot, you're a jerk, you're such a fool, right? All these words that will literally come up. I've heard words like idiot or stupid, or, you know, the bad guys just kind of pushing each other around. These guys, they don't. They're just executing on a bad plan, right? To take over the world, right? The benevolent bad guy archetype.
Well, and that's what we have here.
Right.
Like, they're not truly evil. They're a soft, compassionate evil.
Yes, which is
doesn't
weird.
make any sense at all.
It doesn't. Well, it's Canadian TV. I can't help myself.
Oh, you're just a terrible person. Okay, so this is good for kids. Did you enjoy it? What's your thought?
I loved it.
Did you?
Yeah, I know. I can't say that they're fantastic episodes, but the first episode was kind of, okay, you know, the plan is basically I need to sink all the major cities in the world so that when my city comes to power, it will be the best city on the planet. I thought that is a crazy plan, and they try to execute upon it. Obviously, what I do like, there's lots of things I like about this show. I like that Talon and Penny are actually competitors for doing the right and wrong thing, and that sometimes they have to team together to get the job done, but then they don't team together. So there's lots of things at play. The only problem I actually ever have had with Inspector Gadget is Inspector Gadget himself, because I've never found his shtick funny. I've always found it like very tedious, like we just got to get past the Inspector Gadget parts to get to the good stuff. Then, of course, the second episode, because these are the two 10-minute combino 20-minute complete episode. The second episode was, I can't say hilarious, but very clever with the museum sequence.
Yes,
when they were doing the surreal art, and they're like kind of making all sorts of like silly art references, which I thought were pretty clever.
But a kid is never going to get that.
They won't, but we do.
They haven't taken art history. That is totally. That's what's always interesting when I watch these types of shows. I say, okay, who are you really? Like, what is the demographic you're targeting? Are you assuming either that parents are watching with their kids, or are you targeting college-age kids who maybe have taken a history class, or are you targeting young adults who are sort of reliving some of their younger days?
Could we throw another category in there? The writers and animators who are intelligent people just want to put that stuff in there because it's interesting to them.
Certainly. That's
right? And it's kind of a gimme to them, because if you are a artist, you already know all of these things, so why not?
It makes their day a little more interesting?
Correct.
They're like, gee, what shtick should we do today?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have Inspector Gadget get into trouble, and we'll have his sidekicks bail him out.
Right.
What a novel concept.
Well, you have to admit that sometimes I'm guessing that sometimes doing these cartoons as an adult can kind of get a little bit tedious. Yeah. So to add something clever to it or interesting on your own behalf, because quite frankly, Inspector Gadget is not shooting for that Tiny Toons or Teen Titans or Uncle Grandpa crowd, right? Those cartoons are intended to shoot for an adult audience, and these guys aren't doing that for Inspector Gadget.
Probably.
I think they're just adding something interesting to it because it's interesting to them. I just putting it out there because I'm like, there's no way that Inspector Gadget's going to be primetime must-see TV.
No.
For adults.
And there's not enough depth there.
Correct.
Yeah, my thing with watching these types of shows is, first of all, the 10-minute story format is interesting because you are essentially locking yourself into, and I don't want to get too deep into oh, this is what the problem with kids today, short attention spans and
Right.
that sort of thing.
Right.
But you are locking yourself into a sort of delivery vehicle that can only go so deep in terms of, say, story.
Mm-hmm.
And
What did you think of it? Of the show?
I found it, like you, I thought the art references were cute. I mean, because I'm looking at that and go, oh, I know that's an art piece. I couldn't name them. I should be able to name them, but I'm like, I recognize.
Well, the one piece is the Scream, right? That's a famous piece.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, these are things that I recognize as they're making clever references.
Right.
That is going to go over a kid's head that an adult is probably going to appreciate. The challenge I have is, okay, if you've seen one episode, you've seen every episode in terms of, say, plot structure.
Yeah, I agree.
We're gonna change a couple little variables around, and obviously there's a lot of shows that are that way. You know, the idea of the situation comedy. There's only so many. You know, occasionally the cast will go on vacation, but the bulk of these shows are going to be some sort of domestic squabble, and
That's right.
Alice is going to make a snarky comment, and then they're
Yeah, I knew we were going for the Brady's right there. You and I are on the same page.
With some sort of parent-to-child, heart-to-heart talk at the end.
Can't always go to Hawaii every week.
That's right.
Right.
So, yeah, it's amusing. It's clean. It's, you know, they have some decent sort of visual elements. I mean, the one thing, I don't find Inspector Gadget to be an annoying character. He's a one-dimensional character in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
He's the bumbling detective. They have some creativity in terms of, you know, whatever go-go gadget thing he's going to come up with. I suppose they can play around with that a little bit, and there's a little bit of an anticipation there. Sort of like any show that's ever had kind of a technological gimmick to it.
Sure.
To sort of say, all right, there's going to be some new power that's revealed, some new feature in, you know, Kit's arsenal on.
Why are we thinking the same thing, right? A kid can drive on water this week. Right. I was thinking the same thing. That's funny.
So I sit there and I go, okay, do I want my kids to be sort of watching this really, really predictable show that is never going to deviate into anything besides good guy hanging out, bad guy wants to take over the world, good guy thwarts in 10 minutes. That's it. It's Pinky in the Brain.
Yeah, I will say this. So
a vastly superior show, but
my kids have watched quite a bit of Inspector Gadget. They don't watch Inspector Gadget anymore.
Okay.
Just for this very reason, right? I think, again, it's a creative show, but you're right. It's got one thing going for it, and it's what they do every week. You know, it's just not going to change too much format. Not like season 2 of Buck Rogers, right? Oh my word, what's going on, right? That was insane.
That's where you went.
That's
season 2 of Buck Rogers.
Well, usually a show like that, it's always the same thing, and they try to switch it up.
I did love that show as a kid.
Oh, sure, but you know, season 2 is completely different from season 1, right?
Yes, because they're like where they get on the ship and
they get on the Voyager and they're
they're
traveling around looking for space women.
I didn't like that. I didn't like that.
That's right. But that was their attempt to say, we need to spice this up, and I think they get a formula, and that's just what it is. But it's a kind of a you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't, right? Because you expect a certain thing for Inspector Gadget to happen every week. I mean, it's actually the same problem that Superman has, too. Everybody wants Superman to be this super powerful character, but at the end of the day, he's super boring. No, it's true. It's true. I love Superman, and I love who he is, but over time, and I read a lot of Superman comics.
You just threw the whole DC franchise under the bus. We're going to get hate mail from that.
Well, my wife and I had a discussion about DC today. Anyway,
all
that to say.
That is romance right there. When you can discuss DC
comics,
with the wife.
Yeah. Todd, there's a lot of romance that we have here.
Yeah, that's a whole different show. All right.
So I'd say absolutely recommend Inspector Gadget, but I'd say for his like this is your go-to cartoon, don't expect that.
Yeah, I would. If I were going to tell a parent, I'd say if you've, and again, we don't know this, and this is one of the things that we can throw in as a caveat that we throw in every once in a while. We intentionally watch one show
Yep.
of a program and say, okay, this is what parents have to deal with sometimes. They are presented with a show by their kid or by somebody else, and you sit down, you watch it, and you make a judgment. So we're making a judgment. So maybe there are some variations that we would discover if we watch more of this. I suspect not, based on what I saw. I sort of go, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah,
So.
I was actually thinking the same thing. Like, is there a particular episode in which there's like an evil inspector, right? The parallel universe inspector.
Oh,
or
yeah,
something
we've
like
done that. The Bizarros inspector.
Yeah, the special episode in which they had to deal with something really challenging.
I have no doubt. Yeah. Evil inspector or evil brain or evil penny or whatever.
Or the evil leaper. You never know.
All right.
All right.
You can follow us on Twitter, Parent Mistakes, or you can like our Facebook page, Parenting Mistakes. And we'd love to have some feedback from you.
Yes, we would. Until then.